Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the January Power Authority and Canal Corporation board meeting. We're all pleased to be back in White Plains, sunny and bright on a Tuesday morning to jumpstart 2025. 2024 was a fun and good ride, and we know 2025 will be even better. So great to see and be with everyone again. They say everyone, B. Gonzalez, Cecily Morris, Michael Cusick, Lori Wheelock, Dennis Trainer. Lewis Warren is out and about for other business reasons and unable to join us today. Justin's here, and the beginnings of his team will progressively assemble over the course of the proceedings today. We flipped the script. We're starting with our board meeting, given some travel conflicts, in particular for Justin later on today. So I want to make sure we accommodate that. I'll have an organizational meeting for our Development Holdings Corporation after this, and then we'll close with a risk committee meeting. Obviously a significant day today for us as a board with the formal kickoff approval of the renewables strategic plan, or step one, phase one of the renewables strategic plan. A lot of work, as we'll hear and as you've heard us chat about over the last year plus, but we're finally getting to this official starting line. So look forward to proceeding on that, in addition to typical other matters. But all of that said, we will convene and be ready to rock and roll here. If I could, we've all had a chance to hopefully review the agenda. I'd ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Thank you, Dennis. Second, Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, contractors list, conflicts, everyone's seen and submitted any of those, unless there's any late breaking developments that Karen needs to be aware of. We will start today in exec session. Expect it to run no more than an hour. That said, probably the better part thereof. So if I could ask for a motion to conduct an executive session in accordance with section 105 of the Public Officers Law. B, thank you very much. Sorry to stumble and bumble through that. Dennis, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We will now adjourn to exec session. All right, good morning, or welcome back, maybe, to those who were with us an hour ago when we kicked it off. Otherwise, good morning to everyone who's just now joining. If I could, I'd ask for a motion to resume the meeting in open session. Lori, B, thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. We're back in business. Good, robust agenda again today. Most notably, a focus on pending approval for our renewables strategic plan. But to get us started, as always, pleased to introduce and invite our CEO, President and CEO, Justin Driscoll, to the podium. Happy New Year, Justin.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Morning, trustees, NYPA colleagues, members of the public. Good to be with you here in January of 2025, our first trustee meeting of the year, and what will, in all likelihood, be a very exciting 2025. I want to just start off with a couple of updates and some tentative good news from the governor's budget. The current governor's budget proposal includes another $25 million appropriation for the Canal Corporation that we're very, very excited about. And then, as you may have read in some of the trade press and clips, there's also a proposal around our enabling state agencies to procure renewable energy from the NYPA renewables work. So we view this as a huge win-win for us, in the sense that we're in the renewables business. We're looking for customers for our renewables, but also, maybe more importantly, the state agencies have been looking for a way to meet their EO22 requirements, which require them to be on renewable energy exclusively by 2030. So the availability of our renewable projects to marry those projects up with state off-takers, and they'll have to agree on pricing and the terms of those projects, but we have a potential dedicated customer base for some of our renewables projects. So again, we think it's a huge win-win. We'll see. Obviously, the budget has to be negotiated with the legislature and enacted, signed into law by the governor, but we're off to a good start in terms of the proposals coming from the executive in the budget. So really good news there. So last meeting, we talked primarily about the look back in terms of 2024 accomplishments, and now we thought we'd talk a little bit about the year ahead. And so you'll see that common theme through the presentations of the other reports that you'll be receiving today. So just in terms of from my seat and the priorities that I'm addressing in 2025, of course, on the transmission side of the house, we're always super focused on our transmission work, which is sometimes people forget also critical to the energy transition, the build out of additional transmission assets in order to move those renewable projects around the state. So we've got a number of projects we've talked to you about. I think we've briefed you on our application to the NYSO for the 5-borough Energy Connect project, which is New York City oriented transmission work that we're soliciting, or that the NYSO is soliciting proposals for. That's in flight. We don't know if we'll be selected there, but we think we have some great ideas. Garish is here to put together a great package of proposals to the NYSO, so we're cautiously optimistic that we may be selected there. The Propel project on Long Island, which has really two I'd say characteristics or functions. One is to harden and make the Long Island grid more resilient by undergrounding high voltage transmission, 345 kV transmission on Long Island, given the tendency for them to have storm impacts and so forth. And so undergrounding transmission at a high voltage level, and also enabling some of the offshore wind that's in flight and proposed to come into Long Island, and then potentially even be moved from Long Island up to Westchester and off Long Island. Also, on the transmission front, just a reminder, we're just wrapping up the Smart Path Connect project in the North Country, which is designed to unbottle renewable generation up there, mostly wind. We're about 80%, I think, complete on Smart Path Connect. That's the priority transmission project that the DPS awarded to us to do that work in the North Country, and we're doing that in partnership with National Grid. So we are looking in 2025 to energize that project, which will be an exciting addition to the upstate grid. And then on the customer front, obviously a key part of our work is deepening our relationships with our customers, and it covers the whole range of clean energy technologies. So obviously we've always been in the kind of behind the meter work and HVAC and energy efficiency work for customers, but now it's developing into EV charging work, LED lighting work, potential virtual power plants, solar storage. And so we're happy to announce and to look forward to reaching 1,000 charge ports in the state during 2025. As you recall, we have two components to our charging work. One is the Evolve network that's designed to plug in corridors, heavily traveled corridors around the state, and initially designed to put charging stations where the utilities maybe didn't have the business case for putting them there yet. So NYPA leading the way as a governmental entity, putting those charging stations where the utilities maybe didn't see the justification because maybe there weren't enough EVs in that area. But the idea is it's sort of a chicken and egg, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll put the chargers there and hopefully drive additional EV adoption. So that work continues, and we hope to reach 400 fast chargers around the state. we're also utilizing some of the federal NEVI money to build out some of the Evolve chargers. So we've got a partner in the federal government in terms of some of the financing and subsidies for those charging stations. And then, of course, we've in terms of the customer work, doing a lot of customer-sited EV charging work. And I know Maribel was proud to tell me yesterday that I think we're going to be signing a contract with New York City for on-street EV charging. Just learned yesterday. So we continue to push the envelope in terms of EV charging that we're advancing and enabling around the state. On the economic development in customer, in that context, obviously we have contracts with customers that, run their term, and we negotiate extensions for those customers. And so we have a couple of those in flight now. We're in the process of working with our preference power customers on a change to their contract to lock them into more dedicated, more fixed pricing in the future. And then the Alcoa contract is also coming up for renewal. So we're negotiating with Alcoa on a longer term contract. We're looking to extend it out for a longer number of years to provide the kind of stability and commitment to the community that the North Country, desires, likes to see. So we're close to coming to a conclusion with Alcoa as well. And then one new customer base that we're pursuing that we may have talked to you about, I think we talked to you about previously, but we signed an MOU with the Pentagon to provide all types of clean energy services for the military bases here in New York State. They're authorized customers in our statute, but we hadn't done any work for them up to this point. But now we're in pretty serious discussions with both Fort Drum, West Point, and Fort Hamilton. Right now we're looking at on-site clean energy solutions as they look to decarbonize their operations as well, hoping to provide some resiliency for some of the critical bases. So that work is just getting underway, but the teams are meeting regularly with folks at the base and staying in touch with folks in Washington as well. So we're excited about that. I'll talk to you a little bit more about this before I turn it over to Vanilla, but just on the renewables front, obviously we're coming to the finish line in terms of at least our initial strategic plan and offering, and the result of the work we've done over the last year to set up the infrastructure to get into this business, identify potential projects, establish the governance and the financing capability through the creation of our subsidiary and some of the funding that you've approved. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, but we're coming off the conclusion of the public comment period on the draft plan that we socialized back in October, and looking for your approval later on this morning of the plan. And then on the Vision 2030 renewed, as you know, we're at the midpoint of the Vision 2030 strategy that we launched in 2020. And as we sit here in 2025, I know we've spoken to you about this previously, but so much has changed in our industry over the last 5 years. And so we think it's an appropriate time to assess where we are. Are we on the right path? We think we are. We think the initial Vision 2030 is obviously a solid roadmap for us, but we're in an ever-changing, evolving industry. So it's a good time for us to take a look at that. And we'll be coming back to you at a future meeting with our proposed refresh of the Vision 2030 strategy. That'll be our one of our principal focuses for the rest of 2025. Will be coming to you for approval of the refresh and then launching the new strategy throughout the year. So that's a big will be a big effort in 2025. And then on the Canal front, of course, as we all know, 200-year anniversary of the Canal this year, culminating in the World Canals Conference in Buffalo in September, and then another celebration in New York City in October, where they'll reenact Governor Clinton's wedding of the water ceremony, where he brings the water from Lake Ontario to New York Harbor. So we're going to be celebrating that. We're very excited about that, and that'll be obviously a big canal
Lake
focus.
Ontario or Lake Erie?
We'll take Erie, I guess.
Oh,
I don't know. Isn't it all
I thought your
connected?
canal ran from,
Isn't it
well,
all connected?
yeah, all water's full, I guess. But then it could have been Lake Huron, you know? Yeah, okay.
All right. Well, we'll see where we can.
I recommend Lake Erie.
Okay, we'll take Erie. All right.
This is called the Erie Canal. It's
Yeah, I'll
not the
stand corrected.
Ontario.
I stand corrected.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
That's right.
It's like Gulf
It is-
of America,
it is all
Gulf of
connected.
Mexico.
It is all connected.
But you were renaming the canal.
No. Very good. Okay, so last year we launched this innovation function at NYPA, led by Danielle Piper. It's been a big focus in 2024. We look to continue to lean in and excel in the area of innovation. We've always led and had a very robust R&D function here at NYPA, and we look to build on that and obviously take advantage of new technologies, participate in the development and piloting of new technologies. So these are just a few examples of some of the work that we're going to be doing in 2025 on the innovation front. Jamestown is one of our largest muni customers. We're partnering with them on a hydrogen project. It'll include some of the hydrogen blending in power plants, gas power plants that we did you'll recall out in Brentwood previously. And they'll look to create hydrogen product there for use in their operations. So we're excited about that. We're working with EPRI as we did on Brentwood, and continuing to look for alternatives in the battery storage area. Zinc alkaline battery storage is one of the potential innovative solutions as an option, as opposed to traditional batteries, lithium-ion batteries. And so we're looking to pilot some battery installations at both Oneonta and Westchester counties in furtherance of our CLCPA goals. And we'll be working with the R&D team will be working on some of these longer duration storage opportunities and technologies. And then on AI, we've had a number of briefings for you on AI, but obviously it continues to play a critical role and will play a critical role as we go forward. And we're developing use cases here at NYPA for AI deployment. And we're now creating and developing grid AI foundational models in partnership with vendors to be selected. And this will help us hopefully deploy AI to improve power grid operations in the future. And then in terms of our community work, we're continuing obviously to promote our environmental justice activities, which have really expanded over the last several years, doing a lot of work and potential career opportunities for young people to hopefully attract them to the energy industry and help them consider energy as a potential job in the future, so they can see themselves as part of the energy workforce, clean energy workforce of the future. And then we're continuing to work on educational opportunities and also community energy projects, such as our hydroponic labs that we've done in schools, and rooftop gardens and other types of community energy projects that help communities, help residents in communities see and touch and understand how energy works. And then obviously, not obviously, but 2025 will be a big year in terms of our small natural gas power plants. We'll be coming to you with a plan, our initial plan to decarbonize our peaker plants. That's due in May of this year. We're hard at work in developing that plan. We're working closely with the NYSO and with Con Edison on how the retirement of those plants can be sequenced in terms of being consistent with whatever reliability needs that the NYSO identifies. But we're working on that plan. We've obviously, as you know, been discussing term sheets on some of the sites. We're further along on some sites than others, but we have term sheets for a couple of the sites. We did an RFI for the Williamsburg site, seeking ideas for that location. But a lot of it will be dependent on what we hear from the NYSO and Con Edison, but we're staying very close with them. But this plan is under the budget legislation from 2023. This plan is due in May of this year. So the team's going to be hard at work there and working with the NYSO and Con Edison and our own internal folks to potentially identify the sequencing of those retirements. Some can potentially be retired sooner than others. The law requires that they all be offline by 2030 unless they're needed for reliability or other emergency power needs. So it's just a question of figuring out when and are there places in the city where they're less needed than others, and what are the replacement resources going to be? That's why we're working on the battery storage technologies with some of the vendors who are going to help us consider ideas to retire those plants and hopefully replace them with energy battery storage. So that's sort of it on the look ahead. I could stop there before we get into the renewables, take some questions, and then
let's roll backwards.
Got it.
Do me a favor, roll all the way back to slide 3, if you would. Let's just any conversation questions here. First of all, great drive-by on the depth and breadth of all that you and the team navigate and manage and lead on across the organization or our broader, as I said, mission and vision for success here. So appreciate that, in particular at a time when there's disproportionate or significant focus on renewables. This is a good level set for all that's on our plate and agenda here. But just to ensure opportunity for comment and question, in transmission, obviously, Joe talked, we're in the generation transmission business. That's what we do, all the rest of that. Any points of specific concern as you look ahead in our core business, the G&T, obviously discussion around offshore wind and where that goes or not and all the rest of it. How would that impact us in terms of what we're doing on the transmission side? Does anything stop or speed up or not, or we keep marching?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's kind of early to tell just what will come out of some of the discussions around potential pullback from priorities around certain technologies such as offshore wind. But I think our message is we keep on driving forward. And I can, think of a couple of responses. One is that particularly with Propel, and I mentioned the resiliency benefits to Propel. Propel has a Long Island resiliency component to it that some may think might outweigh the offshore wind enablement piece of it. So I think there are significant benefits with Propel that would drive that toward continued development. And then, to the extent that there's more of a priority on land-based wind and land-based solar, because maybe there's less offshore wind. Well, that means that more renewables are going to be developed upstate. So more transmission
How do we bring that
upstate.
down?
How do we bring it down? That's an argument for why Clean Path hopefully will be green lighted for a continuation to enable more land-based wind and solar. So I think we just keep doing the work.
Stay focused.
Sometimes, the states lean in more heavily. Federal pulls back, states lean in. So we're in a lean in moment, maybe. We'll see. It's too early to tell. But I can, there are justifications for our work outside of those issues.
Team jump in here anywhere along the line. We'll just keep, rolling. The next slide, in terms of evolve and charging stations and all the rest of that, obviously there's been a long saga there. Hence the 1,000 is incredibly notable in terms of the accomplishment. We were struggling initially with the 200 and the 200 to 400. Now we're taking, the more global view in terms of what we're facilitating. I don't want to skip over that. Not that you did, but kind of come back and reinforce a significant outcome for us as an organization. And
it's critical. And, obviously, when we launched that program, I think it was 2018,
Right.
2017,
Longer ago
2018.
than we want to,
Yeah,
at
there's
least
a
some of
whole
us want to
industry
think
that's
about. Right.
that's developed around EV charging. The companies that weren't even there when we started this effort, we go back to the chicken and egg and what we were trying to solve for, which was the range anxiety, which, I think for a lot of people that have EVs, the range anxiety is not the issue that it was 5 years ago. You got Tesla has a huge build out. Now Tesla's making its chargers available to everyone else. That'll be interesting. We have other people coming into the charging market, but we have I think a niche here in terms of the enablement work we can do for customers. I mentioned the Maribel project with the city. You've got the state buildings, college campuses. We're doing work at both Kennedy and LaGuardia airports on EV charging. So those are customers that we work closely with that appreciate what we bring to the table, so we can continue to do the customer sided work potentially as the evolve or longer range work gets resolved or all those gaps get filled in. We still have a lot of work to do with the customers in terms of on-site charging, and we're just starting and opening the door on more urban on-street charging, which to a large extent is not there yet. That's a huge opportunity for us, given the customers that we serve.
You're saying 7 years. I mean, at times it seems like 17. It's been a real journey, no question. So
I think we really added value, to the transition.
No, I think it's fantastic.
And we're trying to look for where does NYPA, where can we play the best role, recognizing that there's a private sector involvement as well.
Where do you determine where to put these fast charge?
So we have an internal study team that looks at traffic patterns, looks at where the other chargers already are, and looks for gaps. And that's what the whole NEVI program was designed to do. That was designed to make sure that you can't go more than 50 miles on any heavily traveled corridor without coming across a fast charger. That's NEVI. And so we're starting to get some of that NEVI money in to fund the NYPA projects.
We can't guarantee the length of the line when you get to that charger, but if you want to wait in the line, you're
anyone that went through the 70s know the long lines.
Exactly.
But if those Tesla charging networks become available to everyone, I mean, they've really built out. Some of those sites have like 16 chargers.
You got something else? Oh, okay. The next slide, you talk about 2030, Vision 2030, obviously, critical focus, forest renewables, took us, on a different path here, appropriately so. But want to ensure, that we come back and resharpen our focus on 2030. While it's a moving target and evolving target, no pun intended, look forward to that, a real critical next step in terms of us as a board and engaging us and coming back to us. So I know we talk in the next 3 to 4 months to come back in a very substantive way. So we definitely look forward to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's, like I said, that's going to be our primary focus.
And it'll be great. We'll be up in Buffalo to celebrate.
We'll have our board meeting there. That's right.
Right. You can get some of that Lake Ontario water when you're up there. Okay.
I'm never going to let this die.
And AI. Talk a little bit about, I don't know, editorialize, not that, I'm holding you to be expert here, but interesting last couple, 24, 48 hours in terms of the AI world, real or perceived, a little bit standing on its head in terms of, what all is going on.
I'm sure we read the same articles, but yesterday the markets, a lot of the AI stocks tanked because the Chinese had come out with this methodology where they could.
NVIDIA had a tougher day than the Buffalo Bills, yesterday. So
where the Chinese can go, and Rob, you're probably close to this and correct me, but as I understand it, let's say that there's 100%, the full bucket of searching is 100%. The Chinese figured out that you could just scratch the surface and go like 5% down of that 100% and get pretty much the same result. And so that means less power. Right. Faster, and
cheaper.
But then I see the American markets. All of a sudden, the American companies are now talking today about how they can, they can do that too, or fix it, or whatever.
It was
Anyway,
cra-
that's
it was
my
crazy.
layman's
And
understanding of what happened.
what it all potentially means to us versus others.
So
but
I think there's going to continue to be like a lot of leapfrogging of technology.
yeah,
So, I mean, you also got to validate the facts. I mean, there's claims by
Right.
the Chinese
right,
of the, efficiency of their chips and availability of their chips.
right.
So we have to validate that, number one. How does that relate to the types of AI that's being applied to those chips? Oftentimes, the technology is outpacing the ability to use the chips straight away. So I think right now it's a case of what's available, what's true, what's not, and where are the gaps relative to US capabilities versus China or other. It's sort of a wait and see,
Yeah.
but I think practically in the way that NYPA is applying the AI technologies, it's solid. It's not dependent on some of the technology, flux that's out there. We're using many different forms of AI, of which we've presented previously and will again. Daniela has a good example of how we're applying it in a real context, but we're using it and we're getting the benefits today. So we keep a very close ear and eye on the changes of the technology. But most companies and most of our technology partners, they don't have the ability they're just playing catch up straight away. So we're all in a race together. It's a question of, all right, what can we practically apply today? How can we get the return on investment and the benefits today? And again, I assure you, we are, but we're proceeding with caution. There's also the risk component. While there are a lot of claims about, oh, this is faster, this is better and more efficient. Well, what about the risks in terms of cyber risks, and the ability to use that, loopholes
Right.
that may exist in chipsets and so on.
Right.
So between our looking at supply chain, looking at how the technology is being used and applied, we're very cautious and working with our risk group and strategic sourcing management, our technology, scouting. We're very close to this and monitor it closely.
And the cynic in me says the timing's very suspect. There's just a lot of
Well,
moving parts and pieces here.
I do, and I think some of the, the announcements that have been made over the last week or so is prompting a little bit of
Right.
this, to your point.
Right.
But I think we're in a good position. I don't think we're at risk, but it just shows how with our forward-looking, sort of pulse on the situation is critical. And I assure you as the board and our stakeholders and community, we have a pulse on that. We keep a very close monitor on it.
Okay. Don't want to go down the rabbit
Yeah.
hole, but, and then just thank you, Rob, appreciate, that. And then the deactivation of the gas plant. I mean, I'm assuming we're just going to stay the course. I mean, it's impossible to predict what demands there will or won't be of those
Right.
plants come 2030, just like it's impossible to predict anything. So we just need to keep marching and be in position to implement. I mean, at this point, it's not about predicting what will happen and when, but it's ensuring we have a game plan to execute in accordance with the parameters that have been set forth.
Right, and so the recognition that the law
Right.
basically says they're supposed to be
Here's
offline
what
by
we need to
2030.
do.
So we're going to start the process of deactivating, or at least filing the paperwork,
Right.
to set us up for that ultimate decision. But we're not going to sit back and wait. We're going to get the process. We've already started the process, but we're going to keep the process going, knowing that the timelines are significant sometimes in our work, and it takes time for permitting and so forth. We're fully underway in terms of the steps that we could take now to enable us to act in the future.
And there's a lot of moving parts and pieces.
Correct.
We're not, in this in a vacuum by any means, whether
Right.
it's Con Ed or there's many others, regulatory and otherwise, that need to be navigated there.
Correct.
So, okay. Other questions for Justine on all that? It's a real good table set for the year and the broader reach of our agenda and focus before we jump into renewables. Anything else? Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So, as you know, a big item
Other
today.
than that, should be a whole home year.
That's right.
Okay. And Lake Ontario water will be, will refresh us as we
They're
start
connected.
to the fourth.
The lakes
Yeah,
are
I
connected.
understand that. I understand that. Yeah, but it's a lot deeper in Lake Ontario too.
So a big item today, approval of the renewable strategic plan that the legislature tasked us with developing. And now that we're in 2025 and after the plan is approved, we can actually begin work on project development and so we're going to hit the ground running. But I thought just before turning it over to Vanella to talk about the plan and some of the changes we made, some of the themes that came out of the public comment and all, I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of summarize where we came from and how we got to today. So, as you know, we received this authority in May of 2023, and we immediately began thinking around how to establish the internal capabilities and framework in order to deliver on this new charge. We also commenced the 2023 conferral process, which seems like a long time ago now, but we did a conferral outreach and we met with over 50 external stakeholders, took all of their input and comments that ultimately helped us develop the draft plan that we socialized in October. We also, if you recall, we did a search for projects and partners. We issued an RFI where we had over 100 responses. Then we issued an RFP, and now we have over 80 approved partners and that are now in our sort of stable of potential partners for future development and projects. We created a subsidiary just recently that was called for or authorized by the statute, and we funded that with an additional $100 million to create the financial framework in order to do this work. As I said, we filed our draft plan in October of this year, and that commenced a public hearing process where we were required to hold I think at least 3 public hearings, and we ended up holding 12 around the state plus a virtual opportunity. And it was a huge effort by NYPA, and took in heard from in those public sessions hundreds of people, took in over 5,000 comments, written comments here, and all that designed to inform the finalization of the plan that will be before you today. Over the last year, Vanella and her team have been looking for potential project opportunities and doing due diligence around opportunities to either develop projects on our own or with partners. And so the plan today includes 37 projects that we've identified as opportunities for NYPA, where we've done significant due diligence. And Vanella will talk to you about that. And then I guess just before turning it over again to Vanella, I just wanted to add that work was not, that the renewables work was only one piece of 4 components to the new authority. I just wanted to mention all the work that's been done on the other 3 components of the new authority we received in 2023. So you've heard on a number of occasions about the workforce development work that's ongoing. We've granted over $20 million in projects and furtherance of that workforce development responsibility. It's been going great. We're reaching new communities. We're supporting communities we've worked with in the past. That'll continue on an annual basis. We have a great team doing that work. And so that's another piece. The third piece of the new authority is the REACH program. We were successful in petitioning the Public Service Commission to establish the regulatory framework around how the REACH bill credits will be funneled through the local utility bills to all the ultimate benefit of the residents. So we have a framework now that the PSC has established where they granted our application. And then finally, on the peaker front, we've got these term sheets underway. We're looking at how the sequencing of the retirement of those units. We've got a team dedicated to the peaker retirement effort here. So we're really driving all 4 of those components, the renewables just being one, although a primary piece of the new authority. So finally, I I just want to provide a little bit of context in terms of the work we're doing in this regard. Just a reminder first, we're not the exclusive solution to filling the state's gap in achieving its climate goals. We're doing this among others. So we've got the work that NYSERDA is doing. We're one tool in the state's toolbox. We're a very important tool, but we're one tool. We're doing it with NYSERDA. NYSERDA just issued over 2 gigawatts of new renewable projects in response to a recent solicitation. We got the Champlain Hudson Power Express, which is designed to bring 1,000 megawatts of power from Canada into New York City. We have the recent announcement that the state exceeded its community solar goal of 6 gigawatts early. So we achieved that goal early. So community solar is going to be a big piece of the state meeting these goals. We've got all the work that we've traditionally done behind the meter with solar and storage for customers. That's also part of the solution. We've got the 2 offshore wind projects that are in development currently, over 2,000 megawatts of offshore wind that's in progress already on Long Island. So the point here is that we're not the exclusive solution to this problem. We're doing it, luckily, with a great team, and others are working on it, and we'll play a critical role. The second point I wanted to make is that what we're really trying to achieve is the 70 by 30, the 2030 goal of 70 by 30, and the 2040 goal of an entirely clean energy grid. So we're working on a 5-year goal and a 15-year goal. That's what this is all about. So our initial draft plan is our first step, our first tranche of projects that are designed to meet these 5 and 15-year goals. And so there couldn't possibly have been, in our first report, our 15-year solution to meeting these goals, right? This is the first effort out of the blocks. We're very proud of it. We think it's a very credible first step, but just reminding us all that this is sort of a marathon. It's not just a 1 year, it's not just a 1 year exercise. And then I think in terms of the realities of renewable development, the project timelines are long. We've been in this business, for a number of years. We recognize, there's a decent time horizon in terms of getting projects built. So we have to recognize that, things don't get built in this context overnight. But again, concluding, we're very proud of this plan. We're very proud of the effort that NYPA management put together to get us to today after all the work over the last about 1.5 years now. So with that, maybe unless you have any questions on that, I'll come back up later after Vanilla. I would call Vanilla up to speak a little bit more detail around the plan.
Okay.
Thanks, Justin. Good morning, board members and the chairman and general public. Now I'm going to start reading through the strat plan word by word and filibuster the entire minute.
Good start.
Just kidding.
We've done that 6 times already, right? Okay.
No, I do want to highlight on key themes since we have last published our draft plan back in October. When we published our draft plan in October, obviously we introduced our strategic plan. We touched on what our expanded authority and the requirements of the expanded authority. We introduced the robust schedule that we had for the public hearings, where we sought feedback from all stakeholders involved and the general public, of course. We highlighted our initial first tranche of projects in that plan, along with our financial capacity, how we intend to go about actually implementing on the strategic plan, which we're still at work on. We also talked about what our efforts, actually what it takes, our operational model, our commercialization models in that, our REACH program, how we intend to move forward with the REACH program. And of course, we highlighted how we selected about the first tranche of projects and the further due diligence that we have to do on those projects before they actually become part of NYPA Renewables portfolio. And lastly, of course, we talked about the team, basically the key NYPA personnel that are supporting these efforts, and the different groups from finance to legal to our environmental justice folks, external affairs, everybody. I mean, when we say it takes a village, it actually takes, I think, the entire state to make this happen. So in our final plan, some of the key themes that we've touched on, Justine mentioned this too, is we updated our executive summary to touch on what we're doing, what the future looks like, and also some revisions to update to the current market status for renewables in New York State and otherwise as well, including our own plan. We also included details about what we heard from the public, highlighting some of the feedback and the comments received through the robust public hearing process we had, whether it's written that we received the comments in or what we heard during the public hearings as well. Another thing that we touched upon, which is important and most important, we iterated it. What we have included as a list of projects is only our initial or the very first tranche of projects. So we also highlighted plans for how we continue to append to our pipeline, continue to look at future opportunities, and kind of like an introduction to, right now, my team is evaluating another additional 3 gigawatts of projects to see if they would be a right fit. Of course, anytime we're introducing those projects, obviously we need to go through an updated plan for the strategic plan according to the legislative requirements. And we touched upon that as well. And there'll be another public hearing and a 30-day public commenting period as we introduce new projects that, depending on how many projects from this additional pipeline on the tranche that we will have, we intend to issue an updated strategic plan, hopefully in this first half year of 2025. So what we've done thus far is only the first step. And while we're doing the full due diligence on the projects that we have in our first tranche, we continue to identify new opportunities to add to the updated plan. A few critical kind of items that we have included in the final plan include the section going into specific sections, but it's more about how did we go about identifying our partners and the vetting process. If you recall, and Justine had mentioned as well, we first issued an RFI to understand where the industry sees value in collaborating with NYPA and how we go about it. Then we issued the RFQ. The RFQ itself had outlined and taken into consideration different aspects, including the experience the partner brings to the table, the financial strength, not saying the robust organization is they're a better partner, but seeing how does it align with what NYPA's financial capability and capacities and our strength is, and are there complementary positions there where we can bring value, both parties can bring value to the table. We looked at their flexibility in partnering with NYPA and how those structures can be established, right? Because we are a unique entity, what we can do versus what we cannot do. There are certain things that we got to take into consideration. And some of the private sectors developers have very critical and kind of like fixed things that they cannot deviate from. So understanding, do they have the flexibility? Can they work with NYPA? Can they align better with our own, not just values and mission, but also our governance and our processes and our rules and guidelines, whether it's procurement or otherwise, how we go about it. And that leads to the last element that we looked at, the legal and regulatory compliance and requirements that, and including our public authorities law, the expanded authority we received through the new legislative. We outlined all of that process as well. And we also talked about not just how we went about identifying partners, we talked about how we went about identifying projects. When we started identifying projects, it was a very long list. How we even got to the initial 3.5 gigawatts actually took some due diligence efforts. We call that, and due diligence is not a one-time and done kind of aspect. It's a continuous process that you have to do through different stages of the project. And it doesn't end when the project comes online either. Even during the operational phase of the projects, you need to be verifying it is performing as it is intended to. That's part of the due diligence as well, right? So before we included these projects in our draft strategic plan, we went through the process of fatal flaw due diligence. So major red flags. It does take into quite a few scenarios into consideration, including strategic alignment. That includes how does it benefit the communities? What is the community engagement or the host community benefits plan at a very high level to see if it aligns with what we're trying to do, right? And then we considered economic aspects of the project. We considered the technical aspects of the project. We considered, again, the legal and regulatory aspects of the project. We considered operational aspects. Do they even have a plan? We considered the operational risk of the project. And we also considered how we can integrate that project within our portfolio. So once we've done the fatal flaw, that's when we included those projects in the strategic plan. Once we've included in the strategic plan, as we go in through the public hearings, we started our what we call our full due diligence process. It's again the same themes as I just mentioned, the strategic alignment, the technical consideration, the economic considerations, the legal and regulatory compliance, the operational and risk aspects that we want to take into consideration, but go into much more detail. Now you're talking about the actual engineering, possibly drawings that we want to review. Now we're talking about looking into the full financial model of the project. Now we're talking about looking into what the projects have heard from the public, because several of these projects have key permits already pulled and secured, et cetera. When they had to go through their, for lack of better words, the town hall meetings, what did we hear as feedback? How is that feedback taken into consideration by the project and incorporated into its design or approach or whichever that is? So, and it's not just the NYPA Renewables team. That NYPA Renewables is entire organization of NYPA, right? We have our finance team involved in the due diligence. We have our legal team. And when I say legal, that's the broad legal. We have, again, the legislative councils looking at some of the aspects for alignment, our environmental lawyers looking at some of the aspects of the permitting, et cetera. We have our siting people looking at certain things. If they have contracts, like with other legal teams, the contract legals looking at legals looking at certain aspects of it too. So external affairs looking at the community feedback, engagement, alignment, what I'll say commitments the projects may have made, and can we honor it with what we are having to do. So that to be done on all of these projects is we're still in the process of doing it. And as we identify and it checks all the boxes that we want to go through is when we will move forward with, again, then comes the commercial aspects of structuring the projects. And we've outlined that process in there as well. The other elements that we included is, what does it take? Justine had mentioned that renewable projects take time to build, right? A typical time frame, even in the industry, if you look up, just Google renewable development process for a solar PV project utility scale, you'll see it could be anywhere between 4 to 6 years, typically, right? That's where our pipeline and a portfolio that we have, this first tranche, includes a good mix of projects. It has early stage development projects, our own sub-developed greenfield projects that are going to follow this process and most likely the timeframes. But we also have mature projects. That's where we began. We have a flavor of different kinds of projects at different stages of development. And the due diligence process has to be customized a little bit depending on where the project exactly stands and what the status is. So we included that in the strategic plan as well, and what exactly it takes, what the process is, how we're going to be engaging with the public and bringing more information about the projects. We did add more details to the projects information, the table, if you all recall, based on the feedback we heard from the public, but also taking into consideration that the full due diligence process is still in progress. So we can only share certain things and we won't be able to disclose everything. But we also outlined, in a way, for lack of better words, what our governance process is going to be, bringing to the board the strategic plan itself for approval. The next step being actually talking about the projects, again, bringing the projects themselves for your information, then the projects going through the typical permitting, interconnection, et cetera. If you know NYSO's interconnection process alone is about 598 days right now with the revised process, right? So the updates may seem like not very often, but that's just the nature of the business. But once we secure the permits, the interconnection, all the costs, we will bring it back to the board for project approval. And that's when the project can go actually get built and we can own and operate the system. So we outlined that process and what it takes and the different steps and how we intend to engage with the public as well. One of the beautiful things, and Justine, you touched on it, and thanks to Maribel and several members of her team, actually, Adam, I have to give you kudos there, because what we had in the state of the state address by the governor, the EO22 idea and how NYPA can support stem from, that's a brainchild of Adam Barsky that Harley developed on and made sure we get to the finish line. So it's a wonderful opportunity that we have where we have yet another avenue to kind of support these projects and be able to find a contract mechanism and a revenue mechanism for them. So we added that state of the state initiative, or the public power for public entities concept, in this final strategic plan as well. Lastly, we talked about and addressed the comments and the feedback we received from the public as a full section, and address some of the concerns and how we intend to go about addressing those concerns as well. And of course, we updated the project map and the list of projects as well. Being upfront about it, like we had about 40 projects. Now we have 37 projects in the strategic plan. And that's kind of, again, like nature of business, right? When we presented in October, we talked about attrition possibly, and due to various reasons. Here, it's just more about alignment of the timelines of how the private sector moves with their projects, how the key milestones may or may not align with some of the legislative requirements we have to follow. And of course, when they make their, I'll call it, the final investment decisions and whether it aligns with our timeline. The good news is the 3 projects that are not in NYPA Renewables portfolio are still moving forward. They'll still be built. They will still be supporting New York State's clean energy grid and transition. That's where, going back to, this is not an exclusive NYPA thing.
Right.
It takes the whole state and we're just a small component of it. I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions.
As we listen to all that and look ahead, lessons learned on process improvement and how we can be more efficient and what can be done. Any thoughts or perspectives on, as you're beginning to, look and take in more and all the rest of that, what we can do to be even more efficient, just to improve our own execution, so it's not all consuming, it's not perpetually an all hands on deck exercise, given the broader scope of our mission and requirements.
Yes, absolutely. I think the answer is twofold. One is it was anticipated and we were proactive about it. That's where this possible next tranche of up to 3 gigawatts come into play, right? Because we expected some sort of attrition and some form of attrition, and going back to Justine's present directive that we got to find more projects to continue to abet. That's where the pipeline becomes, in a way, perpetual. This is our first tranche. We'll have more for what we can do there. From the process improvement standpoint, certain things that we have as legislative requirements, I think we have limited flexibility there. But at the same time, NYPA did establish the renewables, our first subsidiary, the New York Renewable Energy Development Holding Corporation. Internally, our team calls it NYRED, ourselves now. So that's established because to understand, and we have a mirror board, right? And to kind of get that flexibility and be able to be a little bit more nimble on how we move forward, how we make decisions, how we can quickly get to like the project level decisions and be able to move forward with them better. So while it aligns with all the principles, the risk factors, and the typical project governance of NYPA, it is an independent entity where it can make decisions based on the board's approval and how you kind of perceive different things. So that should help us a little bit more as well with how we're going to move forward.
Okay.
And we are growing as a team. That's another thing I have to mention. We have a new project development director that started on my team just yesterday. And we have a few more positions open and we'll be bringing on more people too. So that should help further. So.
Just a quick aside, B made this point earlier when we were talking offline. You use the word attrition. Perceptions are more powerful than reality. As you said, there is an attrition in terms of fallout. Those 3 projects aren't going away. In fact, they're going forward, just not under our ownership umbrella. So it's not attrition as traditionally defined.
That's correct.
It's just separation from the mothership, if you will, but they're continuing to move forward.
That's absolutely
the
correct.
messaging and storytelling, that becomes important.
That's a very important clarification. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
And I think it's also, I never get this.
Lean into it.
But,
There you go.
So the storytelling piece, I think, is going to be very important, right? I think one of the lessons learned for me as a board member is the desire by our public, by the state, for information and transparency, right? And so how you tell the story of how this project continues to evolve, I think is going to be very, very important for both the renewables piece and for NYPA.
Absolutely. And that's where we added more project details. We were very transparent. We even outlined the due diligence process, but we will continue to come out with updates, and how we intend to do it is also identified in the process.
Keep going.
Yes, anybody that wants to join the NYPA Renewables team, I do welcome that too. We have been work. But I will say this. This is our first strategic plan. And I do have a recommendation, if you can make it, to vote on the strategic plan and approve it. That marks our formal entry into implementation and executing on that plan, and get our work started so we can go build projects as we try to identify new projects and try to continue to gather feedback from the public and readjust as needed on our strategic plan, but also readjust the implementation plan. I think that's just going to be it's like wheels are turning now.
Right.
So,
right.
full motion.
Yeah. Questions? Yeah, Lori.
Yeah, no, thank you, Vanilla, to your entire team, to all of NYPA. We know this has been a process. And I think, for me sitting here, I think it's one where we just have to treat this as like a living, breathing thing. It's going to go through challenges. There's going to be bumps, but we have to address them, plan for the unexpected as best as we can, but be ready. And so I really appreciate, apologies, the full scale look here at how we're constantly looking for new projects and kind of weighing that out. And then again, to B's point, the accountability and transparency elements are so important. So I know something that I've, raised and kind of flagged is some sort of continuous tracker beyond the plan itself, so that the public can kind of see, okay, there's 37 projects, what's happening with those in real time? Okay, there's a amended, plan coming, public comment on X number of projects, X number of gigawatts, that something that just helps us all track this, similar to what NYSERDA does with their dashboard. So is that something you all have kind of thought of, again, to try and help with how do we monitor this in real time so the public can pull it up and we can see it too and be able to track what's happening in real life?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I know we are working with our External Affairs team and corporate comms team actually to develop a live dashboard, for lack of better words, with all the projects that we intend to be pursuing and providing status updates, including like some of the themes that are still in development right now is more have a traffic signal kind of elements, red, yellow, green, for where the project status is, the due diligence processes. And if they're in, for example, say the interconnection queue, like I mentioned, it's a 598-day process, right? So the milestones are limited. At some point, the updates to certain projects might look boring because they've been the same, but continuing to provide that information, say, here's the status, here's the step it is within the interconnection queue, et cetera. So those conversations have begun, and we recognize that we do want to provide the transparency and we do want to share the information. So we're just kicking that off to develop that a dashboard, a tracker that the public can actually go on interactive and look at. The other thing I also want to say is that we included in the final strategic plan, a little bit to my dread, but this comes to our team directly, if there are any potential leads and opportunities, because we did hear about location-based development, which in all honesty, we've been working very closely with all our customers, especially in the Southeast New York or the downstate New York region, to identify any opportunities, but it has to go through the project viability, the same due diligence, making sure there is truly an opportunity, because otherwise they're just thoughts, not even leads. But we have included NYPA renewables at nypa.gov is the email address. So anybody that has, and I'm opening that to you all along with the general public, it comes to my team directly. I will ask this though, that share the leads with us, and we will go through our evaluation process, validating it. So, and include it in our strategic plan as it applies the future updated plans.
So thank you. Let's go, B. You want to
I
go?
just want to add that the importance of the workforce development piece that has come along with the renewables project is going to be critical to the way we build relationships across communities. And, I think it has really elevated NYPA's, what do I want to say, image or potential within communities, right? Because the renewables is part of economic development, but as we build on as we build workforce skills in all these different communities where these projects are happening, that is key economic development work as well.
Absolutely. I think that's consistent with the public feedback we received. It was overwhelming support, both for the labor protection kind of provisions that we have under the expanded authority on these projects, along with workforce development. We've already been looking at even individual project level opportunities where we can incorporate some of the workforce development activities. So it is a wholesome solution that brings organized labor, that brings the renewable energy, that actually creates careers, again, like we call it, not just clean energy jobs, but create clean energy careers for New Yorkers. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think that will, again, sustain and help us as well. I think once we have set good relationships, they just keep building and growing. I love that you're going to have an email address where members of the public or people in the industry, anyone can write and be like, here's an idea, because we don't want to be shut off from that. And then it's the tracking of all those ideas. So another, area to just like elevate and with that tracking is, the public comments as well. I see that they are linked in the report and it has the transcripts and all of that. Can you kind of help direct the public to where they can find that? And then also looking forward, are we at NYPA able to kind of have some sort of system where people can comment and then they can see it right away, similar to what, again, like DPS does or NYSERDA?
Absolutely. The answer is yes to both of them. The hyperlinks are included within the final strategic plan, but they'll also be available through some of the outreach that we'll be doing today post your approval of the strategic plan, if that can happen too. And they'll have the ability. There's more than one email, right? What I just shared with you, NYPA renewables at nypa.gov is for the project ideas and project leads possibly, but we have the conferral email that we've published and publicly provided as well. We have the strategic plan commons email that we provided as well, and all of those will be shared on a more frequent basis. And that's one of the things our external affairs and corporate communications teams are working on. Yes.
Perfect. Again, really appreciate it, because I think that's going to have to be one of our strengths, is just, again, evaluate where we are, learn from the lessons we have, and then just keep elevating, enhancing, just like constantly moving forward.
Yes.
Well, unless there's other questions or to come before us, we've all had a very active hand and role in this process over the last 4 or 5 months, from the hearings, the public comment period, revisiting, and all the rest of that. So I'm comfortable we're all fully informed on where we are and how we've gotten here and opportunity for input. So kudos, Vanilla, to you and your team, Justin, the entire organization, for a tremendous effort to get us to what I keep calling the starting line, with more to come. It's a long run, and I'm proud and excited to finally be here. So with that, I'd be pleased to entertain a motion to approve our initial renewable strategic plan.
So moved.
Dennis, thank you. Laurie, second. Unless there's any other questions, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Vanilla, congrats.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
And Justin, before we pivot to the rest of the agenda, you want to talk briefly next steps and manage expectations here? Any other closing comments you have on all of that?
No, well, thank you for the board's engagement in this process. You've been critical to the development of the plan, and we're excited about the opportunity ahead of us now to actually begin executing on the work that we have in front of us. So it'll be a big part of 2025. I guess I just wanted to, first just reinforce something Vanilla said, which is that as we were developing the draft plan and went public with that, we had other projects that we were thinking about that were kind of out there, but they weren't ready for the draft plan that we published. And then once we published that draft plan and took public comment on it, we couldn't add anything to it, right? So you're voting on the draft plan from October as revised based on the public comment.
Right.
But we had other projects out there that are kind of, in the queue, if you will. And so we couldn't add those in, but we're expecting to come back to you sometime in the first half of 2025 with an amendment to the plan, which is how the law sort of lays out the process here. So we'll come back to you with an amendment to the plan that'll incorporate these new projects that we've identified. Sometime we have a meeting in May, and then in July. We may not be ready by May, but we'll certainly be ready for you by July to come back with an amendment. We'll have to run that amendment through not the same public comment, but a public comment process. Right. So we'll have to put it out for 30 days of public comment, and we'll have to do one public hearing for any amendment. So this will be an ongoing thing.
Right.
But we'll be doing our first such amendment sometime, in the first half of 2025, and we'll keep you posted along the way.
Okay.
All right.
Super.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Well done. Okay. Back to our, as Joe likes to say, core mission, the G&T world. Joe, talk to us. Generation and transmission. And whatever else is relevant.
It's always such a tough act to follow. You can go right to the next slide, please. So welcome, everybody. Joe Kessler is Chief Operating Officer. Welcome to the board and the public and the staff here. I guess I have to turn around and look at my points here, but just a couple things I want to touch on first of all, but I just also want to point out that after a long search, we are very pleased to announce that we do have a VP of EH&S. We took a very strategic approach to this. Hearing the board, there's a lot of talk about DART rates and data and things like that, and working with Sam and Ali and internal audits and others around the governance of safety. And we've held steady on all that at the working level. But we were looking more, I think, aspirationally for a strategic leader in EH&S going forward. And with that, I just want to introduce for the board to put a face with the name, our Steve Rutledge, who's who's in the back there. Stand up, Steve, please. He comes into us from Veolia, Duke, and Sun Energy with a vast experience in a number of different areas of utility safety. So we're glad to introduce Steve, and glad he's on board for us. So
Welcome.
So the talking points I have here are really around what we have accomplished, and then I'll look ahead as well. So first of all, in transmission, I want to talk about a few of these key projects here: the Springbrook reactor, end-to-end, the auto transformer AAT5. These are all acronyms that may be not very familiar to folks, but they're very important pieces of equipment. They're just a dot on a one-line diagram, but they're enormous pieces of transformer equipment that are in the supply chain that we've had for a number of years now. And so we're very pleased that we're getting delivery and then successfully replacing this equipment there, as well as it's a big part of our transmission program. These are the things that change the voltages from what we're transmitting to some that can be utilized in the industry, or from what we generate to something that can be transmitted. We also have progress on the STAMP project. I know a lot of people have been seeing, I think maybe in the media, there's been some fits and starts on that. That's the Science and the Technology Advanced Manufacturing Park. That's in Genesee County. That's actually been a unique case study for us because it's a generating asset, or I'm sorry, a load versus a generating or transmission asset. So it's been interesting for us to be involved with our partners at National Grid and the Economic Development Corporation to see how the tenants react as there's ebbs and flows in that. In reality, when a project is a load like that and it doesn't happen, it actually increases system reliability because then they don't have to account for those loads in transmission. So it's been interesting for us because on economic development, which is part of our remit, it's been interesting to see how it all plays out and our role in that.
I didn't realize it was flowing again.
It's back in,
ebbing?
gears are turning now, so it's flowing
Okay,
again. So different tenants, different, but similar type of advanced manufacturing, Edwards and others, different tenants, but we're pleased that it's in progress again. And then I just want to point out that we continue to put projects into the queue at the New York ISO. That's important. This tranche of 40 projects represents a cluster connection agreement. You may probably understand that if you just do these one at a time, it's a very difficult analytic approach to all these projects. So generally they entertain these in clusters so they can see the impacts of these probable projects to the system. So our tranche of 40 projects represents about 12,000 renewable megawatts, and we're very pleased that that's going on as well. Generation side, continue our support for NYPA renewables. Manella touched greatly on that. We know that not only is there going to be our role for delivering these projects in support of NYPA renewables and Trish Lombardi's team, but also on the other side of that, there's going to be some obligations maybe for us on some maintenance in these, and we're going to be continuing to work with Vanella's team on what our role might be versus contracting or whatever else. But we know it's going to take several different approaches, and we're going to cover all those. I also want to just congratulate the team on a new 40-year operating license on the Jarvis project. That's a small 9 megawatt hydro plant that's on Hinkley Reservoir. It supports Canals, supports Mohawk Valley Water Authority, and it supports generation. It's a renewable resource that we're very proud to operate. So after several years of back and forth with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, we got our 40-year license for that. And not on the chart here, but just kind of breaking news, because you may see it in the news, Chairman, as we go back to Western New York, but our ice boom kind of broke a little bit from some of the wind. So that always makes the news in Western New York, probably not so much down here, but our team is looking at that with some drones to assess the damage. That boom is very important to control.
That freighter that was stuck in.
Yeah, it was fortunately not associated with that, but that freighter got stuck in the Lake Erie. Specifically Lake Erie.
It was Lake Ontario water.
No, it's gonna be Lake Ontario water.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
after
It
we
doesn't flow that way. That's
after-
right, I forgot that.
we're gonna make some of it into electrons at Niagara, and then they can have it in Ontario.
How
But
it goes
yeah,
this way
yeah.
and all that downhill. That's
So-
interesting. I thought Lake Ontario flowed uphill into Lake Erie. Okay.
So, but anyway, that boom is very important to the keeping the ice clear, or at least controllable for the project, and not only ours, but the Beck project for our partners in Ontario as well. So we're going to be having some drone flights to assess the damage. It doesn't outright break when it does this. It's kind of built like the best analogy I was given is from our public affairs people. It's like a charm bracelet. So it's the charm, the bracelet part's still intact, but one of the charms kind of fell away. So that's the way to think of it. So it does let a little more ice, and as long as we can manage the wind, we'll
So
get.
it'll be breaking news on Channel 2.
It already was. It was on social media last
Oh,
night. So
breaking
that's right. All of our meteorologists are talking about it in Western New York. So just wanted to touch base on that. Customer solutions. This has been another interesting area of growth for myself personally, and taking customer solutions and getting Maribel Cruz Brown's guidance on this. We created a microsite focused on information guidance as well as products and services and offerings. What I've learned is that, and I've witnessed this with some referrals I've been getting from trustees or other entities around companies that are interested in doing business with NYPA or how NYPA can support them, is that we have a different face depending on who you ask, whether it's economic development, technical competencies. Maybe there's a renewable project that can support you. Maybe there's something on the customer side of electrification that could support you. So we're working very closely, Maribel and I, on ways that the customer can view us, see what they have available to them, and to regionally support those efforts as well. So we forwarded this new link for this system to all NYPA customers and had about a 37% open rate. So it shows there is a demand for this. That represents about 486 customers opening the site. So we're going to continue to work on that as well. And as you can see, we're doing a lot of communication on the preference power customers, the rate change in public forums that's ongoing. And we're holding contract negotiation sessions with the major customers and segments as well. The charging stations we talked about, I know Justin touched on a little bit. I just wanted to touch on that one authorization to proceed that he did. That's through the New York City Department of Transportation in collaboration, through Department of Citywide Administrative Services, or DCAS. So that represents 600 chargers that are now going to be in the queue. Those are level 2 chargers at 150 sites. About a $31 million commitment to get that work done. So very proud of that commitment to move forward as well. Canal Corporation. So we have an announcement that to extend the navigation season to commemorate the bicentennial. We have I'm going to ask Justine Heilner to come up in a little bit. She's a capital planning manager at the Canal Corporation. On the completion and approval of the Canal
Are we
Recreation.
extending it to start, finish, or both?
A little bit of both, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, because we want to be open for the bicentennial, so it's going to go a little long for this September. So,
Okay.
so yeah, and then, but they also have this Canal Recreation Commission 2050 plan that we'll talk about a little more detail in a few moments. But I just wanted to touch on that. We also have a contract award for consultants to support federal and state grant identification and acquisition. And we have 8 Canals consolidated funding application awardees amounting $1 million to 8 different communities along the canals for capital projects in their communities as well. So some exciting news. And I see Trustee Gonzalez smiling, so I think she's happy.
We had a great Canals Recreationway Commission meeting where they unveiled the plan. And I will say that just the alignment, right, between Canals and NYPA, you can feel it, and it just makes for much more comfortable meeting.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. That's our desire. So I'm glad to hear that. I guess we go to the next slide. Look forward. So looking forward, clean energy. We have a transition plan for the small natural gas power plants. Justin touched on that as well. and the supporting renewable development. So again, those are just our priorities. There's a lot of detail in there that have already been discussed, so I won't go back into that. If there is any questions, obviously I'm able to answer those. In transmission, as Justin and the chairman were speaking earlier, there is always going to be a critical role for transmission. That's the backbone of everything we do, regardless of what renewable or other generating resources and loads come into play. So we're actually looking at, we have a SVP of transmission now, Sal Rojas, and we're looking at an operating model to support what all these interconnections and the equipment that's going to be associated with those, what kind of maintenance is going to be needed for them, and where should our crews be situated. So we're going to, be talking to IBW in the future when we get these thoughts fleshed out and make sure they understand what they're up against. And then in the Southeast region, of course, there's a number of different assets that we have to attend to as well. So that operating model is again going to be very, very flexible as we look at that. I think we'll start probably in the North Country, because I think that's where most of the smattering of some of these new substations will end up in terms of the renewables. So we'll start there as well. And there's a number of interconnections that we have to think about there. And one of the other things that's a part of that is this TOP registration. So that's a NERC designation. It's called transmission operator. We are a transmission owner, a TO. We're TOP as well. We've delegated that authority to the other entities in support of some of the transmission operations that we do to date. We're going to take on that certification and obligations to operate some of the equipment. We actually need to do that prior to operating the stamp location. So there's some obligations there to be compliance based as well. And just continue to look at the interconnections of the systems that we have and to plan for those as well. On the customer side, you're going to hear a lot about customer centricity and the things that we're going to do for outreach. Again, just touching on that multifaceted view of the power authority that our customers have. And we had some learnings with some of our key customers. One recently was Global Foundries, where we were learning some of their power quality issues. Had a meeting with them and realized it's not necessarily the the power, the jobs requirements or some of the economic development and capex and their load, but also their power quality. Very significant in the chip fab world and the AI. So we're going to be supporting organizations like that and thinking through as their trusted advisor some solutions for them as well. And I just want to point out too that we did achieve a record high capital budget for the Canal Corporation. Delivered the highest capex history for customers still, for including Evolve, $390 million plus. We had a record number of those authorizations to proceed, those ATPs, and CPCs. They're basically the commitments for $840 million. So that's basically the queue. That's not all money that's going to get made this year, but that's the queue. That's the pipeline of projects that we have. So very fluid motion and increasing motion in all the electrification and energy efficiency in all of our customer locations. And Canals, we do have the World's Canals Conference. Justin touched on that. We'll be hopefully the successful meeting in September for the board, but participating in that as well. And then
Hopefully successful.
Well,
What does that imply, Joe? I mean,
it will be successful.
okay, good. Incredibly successful.
And again, we'll touch on the Canals recreation plan. But before I go to that, I just want to touch a little bit on some safety, because that's been a topic of discussion with the board. And just want to let you know that we did a cultural survey. I think I touched on that last time, a safety cultural survey. We got some immediate feedback, direct feedback from our employees. And this is everybody from the represented employees to through management, and made some immediate reactions to that. And we're going to continue to work with Steve and his team to continue to engage the workforce on that. So utilizing that safety culture to engage, we're going to continue collaboration with the represented workforce. Got a couple of meetings coming up with them. In fact, one's this week. I think they're going to be meeting to go over the results of this, specifically with Local 2104 and the IBW. They have seen the overall piece so far, but we're going to get into the weeds a little bit with them. We also are thinking about this in a couple of different ways. So one is our customer solutions. For example, our customer project delivery team, we want to host a safety summit for them as well, with contractors that emphasize the importance of safety on their job sites. So it's not just on our operating sites, but we're doing boiler replacements. We're doing all kinds of projects, and we want to make sure that all of our contractors and our representatives that support our customers know our philosophy on safety to keep them safe as well. We are going to continue to use these motivational speakers. These are often people have gone through some unfortunate incident that have the scars to prove it, quite literally in many cases, and share their stories in a very interactive way in person with our staff to kind of make sure everybody understands how anything can happen in an instant and can affect their families and their friends as well. And we also are picking up themes already from this survey around some of the commonalities that we have in the data around our injuries. We have a lot of ergonomics. So this is a lot of people twisting, moving things. So it's back injuries, joint injuries, things like that. So when we see that now using that data, we're going to leverage that to focus training areas and maybe even equipment and design changes on things to prevent that going forward. So that's going to be our focus there. Next slide, please. So also we figured this would be very timely as well. Just want to make sure we have our eye on the ball in this area as well. There's been a significant amount of wildfires in California. We have seen the effects of wildfires from Canada and even in New York State in our own system. But even going as far back as when we had that tragic situation in Maui, we took an aggressive, proactive approach to make sure that we had our own plans in place around understanding what critical loads were out there that we serve. And also, in that case, if you might recall, there was some criticism of when they de-energized or not. Now the criticisms in California, or maybe they de-energized too soon for critical loads. We don't know the details of that yet, but we're staying in tune with that with our partners through like LPPC and APPA to understand what happened there and root causes. But before we even do that, we're looking at our own load and we're looking at our own situation to make sure that we have a full understanding as well. So we're working with the New York Independent System Operator, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. And we also have an aggressive vegetation management program. So we never want to be the one that starts this. So we actually have an award-winning vegetation management program that we use not only for dam embankment maintenance, but also right-of-way maintenance. And we're using LiDAR and other technologies to make sure that our zones are clear as well. We also have some 24/7 real-life monitoring and weather in multiple sources from federal, state, and the private sector. And we have the EPA's Air Now application installed on all the phones. So when we have the fires that bring in kind of that air that we had a couple of years ago in the summer, we can notify our employees whether or not they should be working outside. And we have actually stood down work based on those conditions. So we don't want people out there, harming themselves at any cost. And then we're also partnering with EPRI's Wildfire Smoke Hazards Research Project to give NYPA a better understanding of the makeup of wildfire smoke, improve ways to protect workers, and provide earlier detection and air quality with the mobile air monitoring. So just a lot of work in that area. Just wanted the board to know that we're kind of following that, making sure that we're staying on the cutting edge of that for our own assets and have a clear understanding of the impacts that we might encounter if something like that were to happen to us.
I just saw something this morning, or coincidentally on TV, the camera view of arcing in California and arcing, and they were, whether it was Dots Connect or not, power company saying no, it wasn't us, but then boom, 10 minutes later the fire starts. So yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's something
just incredible.
To monitor. Yeah, it is. So maybe I'll entertain Q&A here before I bring up Justine, or do you want me to bring her up?
Just pause for a minute, catch your breath at minimum. Thoughts, questions for Joe? Okay.
Oh, thank you. So that was great.
No, good to rebalance,
So I'll if you don't mind, I'll just go on to the next part with the CRC 2050 plan. So Rebecca Hughes, regretfully, she couldn't be here. She had personal commitment, and she'll be watching online, but it prevented her from traveling this morning. So I'm pleased to introduce Justine here. So just a little background. The Canal Recreation Commission was established in 1992 when the canal system was transferred from the Department of Transportation, New York State Department of Transportation, to New York State Thruway. In 1995, the commission published its Recreationway plan, establishing a bold vision to transform the industry shipping channel into a thriving place for New Yorkers to enjoy. The 300-plus mile Canalway Trail, established under the plan, was a precursor to the Empire State Trail that would follow decades later. In honor of this year's bicentennial anniversary and the opening of the Erie Canal, the commission was updated their plan looking ahead for 2050, contemplating the future of a canal as we commemorate its past. Note that this plan is distinct from Vision 2030. Vision 2030 is our near-term business strategy, while the Recreationway plan is a long-term vision that a whole ecosystem of stakeholders can embrace and champion. I'm pleased to introduce Justine Heilner, a capital planning manager and landscape architect who co-led the plan update with the CRC, and asked her to come up and speak to it. Thanks, Justine.
Greetings, everybody. Greetings, Chairman and board members
Good
and
morning.
attendees. I'm Justine Heilner. I actually do work for NYPA, but all of my work is on canals. And I think that's a really good example and way to lead in, next slide if you would, on this project. So as Joe mentioned, and as Bea mentioned, this was truly a collaboration between NYPA, Canals, and the CRC. And just doing the project over the last year was a great refreshment of all of those relationships. We made a lot of new connections that I think will serve us really well going forward in the future. And it was just a great project to be involved with. The 2050 Recreationway plan was a collaboration, as I mentioned, and it was also facilitated by a team led by Agency Landscape and Planning, who are a world-renowned planning and design firm that have deep experience with public outreach, planning for complex landscape, recreation, and urban spaces, and they've even been involved in an ongoing planning effort for the Highline Canal Conservancy in Colorado. So a lot of great experience from them that helped lead us through the whole process. The plan is rooted in contributions from over 500 stakeholders who were challenged to think about what the New York State canal system will look like in the next quarter century and what we want it to look like. Next slide, please. The ultimate vision for the plan is building on.
Oh, there's Lake Ontario.
There it is. Ontario and Erie.
Yeah, right.
And also that's right, Lake Champlain, and going right down to the Hudson River. That's not our territory, but as we've mentioned over and over about these flowing waters, it's all connected, right? And building on the trail and the canal system that we have, now we're looking at a future where we see this through line that is defined not only by the waterway and trail system, but open public spaces that add value for visitors and communities all along it. Over the last 30 years, with climate change, with just the way people live and work and play, we have a really different understanding of the value and use of parks and recreation spaces. And this plan is a real evolution of the original plan to think about the system to address contemporary needs and functions, including the ecological services, public health, economic impacts, and culture that canals bring to the state of New York. Next slide. So after meeting with all of the stakeholders, both internal and external, the team came back with a set of guiding principles. And the report, which is quite meaty, and hopefully you will all have a chance to take a look at it, is structured around those guiding principles. And from those principles, there are a series of strategies and actions that the whole canal community, that's us, that's our communities along the way, that's other state, federal partners, whomever we reach out to, can help pursue. There are case studies and precedents in the report as well that give us something to learn from. So the guiding principles, as you can see, all conveniently and cleverly start with the letter C, and I will quickly walk through them. But as I said, I encourage you to look at the report because for each of them, there are many actions that we can think about pursuing or teaming with other partners to do. Next slide, please. Care. So first off, caring for the canal's infrastructure. And what that means is the expansive system of locks and dams and canal walls and terminal walls, but it also means the green infrastructure that we are now stewards of, the trailways and open spaces that go along either side of it, and the water that flows through. It's a man-made waterway, but at this point, it acts a lot like a living ecosystem, and where it's important for us to think about it that way. This principle is aligned with our long-range capital planning work, and it looks at how we take care of things from staffing to our physical infrastructure and how we take care of trails. Next slide. Convening local residents and visitors. The system needs to serve people next door to the waterway and also visiting from across the world. That is, it's a local resource and it's also a tourist destination. The near-term role for the Canal Corps would be developing things like signage, wayfinding, standardized amenities that help us have a recognizable presence and also help us take care of it more easily. And we also we'll be working on with the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor on an amenities gap survey, which helps us know where the investment makes the most sense if we need to prioritize. Next slide. Connecting upstate New York to the world. This principle is all about establishing the system as a global landmark and introducing the world to New York's rich landscape and history. Obviously, kicking off with the World Canal Conference in Buffalo is a great way to, dig into that work and also kind of kick off the next stage of doing that. Slide 9. It's also, as we know, the 200th anniversary, and commemorating history and culture in all its forms is really an important part of the canal. It's part of our cultural identity, but it also should reflect all of the different stories and perspectives and experiences that came with the development of the canal system over the last 200 years. And so we will continue to champion more voices, more inclusive and representative stories, and also making how we talk about the canal accessible to a wider range of people. Slide 10, catalyze.
You can keep going. We've got
Okay,
it.
yeah.
So
Next
just
slide.
keep rolling.
The canal
Okay.
is connecting. It's really important that we think about, we've talked a lot about economic development when we did reimagine the canals, and we've kind of pivoted away from those big bang things. But what really is important is that for a lot of these communities, that waterway is kind of a front door. It's a calling card. It could be the defining feature of their communities. And so this principle is about defining that feature and also supporting communities as they invest in their waterfronts. Champion, the next slide. Championing quality of life and inclusivity for all users. You've probably heard over the last couple of years of all of the great work on accessibility that has been happening on canals. And I think it's really dawned on all of us as we dig into that we have a really special resource. Our waters are calm. The trail is fairly flat. That makes it really special in terms of accessibility for all kinds of users. And it's really important for public health. And so we'll continue to look at ways that all New Yorkers and visitors can benefit from the beauty and amenities of the system and really lean into those attributes that are so special, very different from our mountainous regions of New York, And finally, cultivating upstate's ecoregions and natural systems. As we mentioned, the waterways move through. You can't control you can control it, but water will always move, which means that we always need to be ready to react. This principle focuses on strengthening and supporting the landscapes and habitats through which the canal passes. The next quarter century will be very much about being ready to respond to rapidly changing climate events and mitigating negative environmental impacts. And the canal has a really important role to play. And we can do that while also enhancing the value of the canal system as an open space that supports diverse ecosystems. We can increase the biodiversity. It's a great habitat corridor that runs right through the state. All of those assets can be built up while also doing the safety functions and the real functional things that we need the canal to do, and still be ready to be a transport system, So the next steps. With the CRC, we will publish the plan this spring, and we will promote it through our website, our social media, and a series of interactive presentations as we lead up to the bicentennial and the World Canal Conference. It's a plan for everyone. It's not all on NYPA and Canals. The actions and strategies aren't just for us to do. This is also a guidebook for the state and for communities. And this way it helps all of us align our vision. So questions?
A great overview, and very exciting. Again, affirms our leadership role, but appreciate your last point that we're leading a broader based group here. As opposed to owning it all. We've got a responsibility to lead and do that from the front, but others active participation.
Yeah.
I don't know, B, your thoughts is.
I've
you've
been through
been-
the plan once.
I know,
so
you're most informed around the table here, for us anyway.
It's been exciting to watch the development of this plan and how the ideas just kind of came together to make it plan for New York, right? It's not a plan for NYPA, it's not a plan for Canals, it's a
Right,
plan for New York. And
right.
we didn't talk about it here, but you know, the relationship with parks, right?
Mhm.
The
Yep.
new relationships that we'll be developing as a result of this plan because of the interconnections of Canal to other parts of the state system. So it is exciting and I'm hopeful. One fact that you didn't mention today, but 1% increase in commercial use of the
Utilization.
canal. So, you know. I just
One small
laughed.
step.
One small step. One tiny little step.
One small step. Well, it's, you know, exciting as I'm listening, you know, I have to reflect back to, was it 2017 when
Mhm.
we took responsibility and what our focus was then versus
Yes,
what our focus is now. Is pretty much a 180 in terms of
absolutely.
stopping the bleeding and stemming the literal tide to, leading the way to, you know, all that it can, you know, be in a very glorious and exciting and distinctive way. So kudos to everyone and appreciate your involvement here to, you know, get us to this point, Justine. So,
Great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, next up, financial, but I think I know, Justin, you got to hop momentarily here, right? So anything, am I right? You have to hop
Yes,
soon?
yes,
So anything before you exit that
yes, please.
you want to impart, any final wisdom?
Yes,
Before you
please.
go share some wisdom in Albany?
Oh, yeah, hopefully. I wanted to take a moment to recognize Eve Noel, our head of strategy. This will be Eve's last board meeting. So we want to wish you well. I want to personally wish you well on behalf of VMC. Eve's will be moving on to another opportunity, but he's done fabulous work for us and with not only the original Vision 2030, but the refresh as well. So thank you for all you've done for NYPA and Canals and best of luck to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's
All right, Eve, thank you. Otherwise, you're off. Safe travels and good luck sharing your thoughts and views with the legislature today. All right, thanks, Justin. All right, speaking of imparting wisdom, as he's prone to consistently do, Adam, it's your end.
Good morning, trustees, NYPA colleagues, and members of the public. First, go over the financial report in terms of the year end, where we're looking now based on our actuals. We covered a lot of this during the finance committee meeting, so I don't think we need to dive into the details, but the long story short, we're doing ahead of our target, so we are safely meeting all of our metrics. We're generating the funds we need to continue to fund all these initiatives we've been hearing about this morning. So we're going according to plan. So I think that's really what the good news is here. We're still going through the audit process with the external auditors, and we'll be coming back in March to have the final audit and the final reports there. But as far as we're concerned, we see ourselves hitting these numbers in this range without too many material differences. But also mention too, when we come back in March, just as a side note, we will be asking for a release to make a payment, a voluntary contribution payment to the state this year. They authorized 20, we're making a payment of 5. And I believe that this budget will bring down the authorization from 20 to 10, and the contribution should go to 0. So that's sort of what I had been discussing in years prior, that we had an agreement going back a few years to slowly, phase out the voluntary contribution from 20 to 0. What I would say is they've been good to their word and have followed through on all those commitments. So that was really, really good news for us.
And you have the 5 reflected or accrued here.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Any other questions on the financials before we move ahead?
As you said, we had a good discussion last week
Yep.
with finance. So kudos publicly again to you and the team for steering and guiding the ship in another very efficient and productive way, not just because it's better to meet or beat plan, but it's critically important for, as we've heard again today, all that's expected and wanted and needed from us, that our financial foundation and the balance sheet from which we are able to work and leverage. So great job to you and your
Great.
team in particular. So thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate the support from the board and all of our colleagues around the organization to meet these goals. Next slide. Just as our look ahead, overarching, right? The main thrust of what we're trying to do is to really help support and help execute on the strategy. It's one thing to have a strategy, that's great. Next thing you have to do is actually execute on it. Otherwise, just words on a piece of paper. We have daunting tasks and a lot of needs to meet. And we need to find more innovative, creative ways of stretching our dollars and being and leveraging that and being innovative. And that's what we've been setting out to do over the last few years. And we're going to continue on that course. As we mentioned previously, we had a special entity set up at the Empire State Development Corporation, where they've created a local development corporation, which will be the issuer of prepaid bonds. And what that will do is enable our customers who have PPAs for solar, back-to-back PPAs with us for, say, solar or any kind of, could be wind, but mostly will be solar. They can put those PPAs into this conduit and get a 10% savings on their PPA price. So it enables them to get a better price. And that's something that's unique that NYPA can bring to the table. Vanilla was talking about it earlier. What's the differentiators for NYPA? And it's not just about only owning, it's about enabling, it's facilitating, it's making sure renewables are getting built. So anything we can do to make it more affordable for our customers is really what we want to do, because affordability has got to be also a big part of all of this when you talk about building out renewables. We have some FERC filings that we're doing to, again, make sure we're getting the right amount of money that we're entitled to for all of our regulatory activities. That seems to be going well. It was mentioned earlier in Joe's section about doing the adjustment for the hydro rates, right? That have not been adjusted in over 10 years. We've been working with all the external stakeholders, hopefully to bring that process to a conclusion by mid-year. Also looking to create, as I mentioned before, create off-balance sheet structures that help us do more financing than we could do if we were constrained only by our own balance sheet. We are $10 billion of total assets, total net position liabilities. So there is an absolute limit into types of borrowing we can do. But if we work with external partners and create external financing vehicles, we can then be able to issue more debt in conjunction with them that won't count against our limitations when we do it on balance sheet. So we're looking forward to that. So for example, really in a transmission area. So we talk about Propel, we've capped our investment there at 500 million, but we have the right to buy up to, say, another 400 million. Working with Garish and other partners, we will be looking to up that amount, but using a private partner to do so. And what that'll allow us to do is be able to get a bigger share of the project, and that private partner will pay NYPA development fees, management fees, we'll do the O&M, and we'll also have the ability to bring that into our ownership down the road, whether it be 15 years, 20 years. So it gives us sort of an option to be able to acquire those assets at a later date and then keep more of the share of the project. But as we look at these other projects, whether it be the Clean Path project, the New York City PPTN, and we're talking about 5 billion, 10 billion, how is NYPA going to keep its share? It's going to be through syndicating out part of our ownership and acting as the developer, acting as the facilitator, and getting paid to make all of that happen. So that's something else we're very excited about. Another effort, Justin referred to it back in December, We are going through a process now to identify some long-term suppliers of renewable energy to come in through our HTP line. So we have a line that goes from New York, 49th Street, through New Jersey and the whole PJM market. So one of the things we're looking to do is have a long-term, 20-year at least supply of renewables coming into New York City, help New York City meet some of their needs. We think it's going to be a very accretive to NYPA to help pay for that line, which costs NYPA quite a bit of money. So we're very excited about what we're seeing so far from the various bidders, and we're going through a process to narrow that down now. I mentioned PPTN, and also just on the SSM side, again, continue our efforts there, supplier diversity, all the efforts to have more outreach and increase that spend from what it was last year. So again, really pushing ahead on our supplier diversity efforts. On business readiness, today you'll be voting on one phase of what we're doing to replace our ERP system, which is the Project Luminate, that will replace SAP with a new version of SAP for HANA. And we're also doing lots of other work throughout the organization in innovative digital transformations such as Procore for project management, as well as SAP Analytics Cloud to help do more higher level work from the financial forecasting and planning people. Captive insurance, we've been talking about that as well, our new subsidiary to help lower our costs of insurance. But one of the things we're finding out is that this will have a lot of utility on all the renewables we're talking about, because insurance is becoming very expensive in that market. And again, where does NYPA bring value? If we can come in and make the insurance more affordable for the project, that goes to the benefit of ratepayers and others. So we can come in as a tool to help make that happen. Expanded authority, we spent that morning talking about that. A big part of our efforts are going to be to, again, support all the financing. We're going to have a meeting later on to kick off the subsidiary of the Renewable Corporation. So we'll be able to hit the ground running after today and start signing projects and starting to get those developed and financed. And as Vanilla was mentioning before, the State of the State initiative, which is very important. Again, thanking Vanilla, Harley, Nick Gonzalez, everybody to help make that happen. We'll be meeting with OGS and putting together, PPAs to make 500 megawatts of renewable happen. So that is really a big deal. Any questions on this?
Great recap of, as you said, the how. It's always easy to talk about the what. It gets a lot tougher to talk about the how. And this is a key to ensuring we can do as much as we can back to, that piece. So, yep, well captured here. And I find it interesting you use the word accretive and HTP in the same sentence. So 2025 is going to be a really good year. Can't wait to see that.
It's called turning a lemon into lemonade.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I look forward to having a glass of that later in the year. Anybody else for Adam? Okay.
Thank you.
A bunch.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, Alexis, a little drive-by on risk. Head of Risk Committee later today.
And we do. So good morning, trustees, colleagues, and members of the public. I'm pleased to share today a summary of our updated risk appetite, which our colleague Tom Spencer, VP of Operational Risk, had really built excitement around. So I hope you're ready, because here it comes. Perhaps a little context before we begin. Risk appetite is simply the amount of risk that we're willing to accept in order to be able to deliver on our strategy and our objectives. Setting risk appetite is a component of a mature risk management process, which we've shared that we are happy to be maintaining. When we assess our enterprise risks, then we compare them to the risk appetite levels. And you will see this shortly in the Risk and Resiliency Committee when we give our update there as well. Our original risk appetite statements were first developed approximately 2 years ago. So now with the expanded authority on our work to refresh and review the strategy, it was also time to relook at the risk appetite levels and consider if we needed to make any adjustments. We also recognize that NYPA and Canals have different business models. And so really one appetite statement would just not suffice. So we also took the opportunity to go ahead and develop risk appetite statement for Canals separately. Oh, we're already on the next slide. Perfect. Thank you. Who pushed us ahead? Josh, thank you. Awesome. So this is a summary specifically of the risk appetite levels for NYPA. Through our review process, we actually reaffirmed that most of the levels were going to stay the same. That means when we look at this picture, we have risk appetite categories here on the left. On the right-hand side, where you see the vertical blue bars, that would reflect the level of the appetite that our executive team has just approved. Most of those blue bars have remained in place, and that is because our authority was expanded. It was not radically changed into something completely different. So this is pretty much aligned with that. There were 3 areas where we actually did adjust the risk appetite levels. And I can draw your attention, they're kind of in the center, all in a cluster, not on purpose, just worked out that way. The first thing that we did was we actually had one risk appetite category originally for third-party risk. But what we have done now is separated that into 2 components, supply chain, so the stuff that we need, versus joint ventures and partners, so the relationships that we need to enter into and maintain. Those do have different risk appetite profiles, if you will. So for supply chain risks, if you look at the white vertical bar, that was the prior position of our overarching third-party risk appetite. That is now gravitated, we've pushed that a little bit lower, and that is to reflect the continuous efforts that we've been reporting to you on regarding supply chain difficulties and the steps that we're taking to mitigate those and proactively stay ahead of that. However, for for joint ventures and partnership risks, as well as for our new ventures and strategic risk initiatives, those you'll see we've actually moved that bar over, indicating that we're willing to accept some more risk here. That is reflective of the need that we need to be more open-minded to more opportunities going forward as we execute on the expanded authority. It does not mean that we're trying to take risks that greatly outweigh the rewards. If you look, moderate risk appetite is when we're at about equal. Another, I think, really important component to understand is that as a public benefit entity, we are generally risk averse. So what this summary at a glance helps us to do is to actually just understand the relative positionings of our risk appetite. That really reflects the trade-offs that we are willing or not willing to make in the pursuit of delivering on our vision and strategy. So as an example, you would see here that we are being more open-minded to opportunities for new strategic initiatives, especially as we look to innovate and to implement our expanded authority. However, not to the extent that we are willing to jeopardize or compromise our commitment to safety, right? They have very different profiles, as you've seen. So the way to really look at the risk appetite summaries is just to keep in mind, it really is the relative positionings that help us indicate how we are navigating where all risks are not created equal. There are some that are threats, there are some opportunities, and this is our guide rails for that. Let me pause here for a moment and see if there are any questions.
Always helpful. Big picture, get it, buy it. Not to get into the weeds, supply chain risk. So we're pulling our risk appetite back at a time when it would seem to me that the overall risk level of the supply chain world is elevating. So, in terms of what our risk mitigation efforts are, how we're hedging or to de-risk the supply chain, we can come back and have a conversation about, but we're not in control of supply chain risk. So there's only our ability to manage and mitigate and all that. We can have that, conversation in terms of our risk appetite, what we're looking to take on and the inherent need, joint venture and new strategic initiatives. Yep. We need to take on more risk. I just, would like to, further understand how we're de-risking the supply chain at a time when it's, whatever you call it, as I've said. So.
Yeah. Of course, we can take that more offline too, but maybe just as an interim response as well, to keep in mind that that white bar was a prior positioning. And I think what we wanted to do was reflect the additional level of awareness we have to some of the complexities of the supply chain issues that we're facing, and indicating that the steps that we're taking, especially with regard to long lead time items, further investments, multiple suppliers, while also trying to balance our view towards spreading and having diversity across suppliers, more from a DEI perspective. That is a very complex area that we're really trying to make sure we're doubling down on. It doesn't mean that we won't face more risk though, correct, Chairman? So yes, the risk is coming at us pretty hard.
Okay.
All right, hopefully that's a tied over. Okay, great. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This represents a summary of our first ever risk appetite for canals. That is why you will only see blue bars. There have been no shifts or adjustments that has been set. While most of the risk appetite categories are the same or similar to NYPA's, there are a few that vary just due to the nature of operations at canals versus our electric utility. Three primary examples are finance and capital availability. We have a slightly higher appetite here as we are exploring the additional funding options for canals. This is very consistent with discussions we've had over the course of the past year as well as this morning. So that is reflective. It is in a different bit of a spot than NYPA's was. Partners and new ventures have a little bit of a lower risk appetite compared to NYPA. And this is just reflecting the high prioritization that we are giving to critical infrastructure as a leading consideration, even as, of course, we look to balance and focus some efforts around the revitalization of the canals. And we just heard about the plan this morning, the longer term plan. But given the focus that we've had on making sure that we think with critical infrastructure as a really important first gauge. So it is a little bit lower than for NYPA, with renewals pursuing things a little bit differently. And then lastly, we do acknowledge that there are limits of controllability to fully preventing accidents during the ordinary course of recreational usage of the canals. And this is in contrast to NYPA electric facilities as an example, where we are specifically designed to restrict access. So that is another difference that we needed to make sure that we were accounting for and being very transparent about. Again, most of the other categories are the same, if not just, similar, no material difference, but we did go through very thorough reviews across the leadership team and within the Canals organization to arrive at this. I will be quiet to see if there are some questions around this profile.
And there's nothing in either our NYPAs or Canals that varies, or our current level of risk significantly varies from our thresholds?
Where the risk itself varies from thresholds?
Right, where we are
yes,
today versus the threshold. I mean, there's nothing
yes.
where things, the realities of today is significantly different than what our threshold is.
We will go into that in a bit more detail when we do the enterprise risk review and the risk and resiliency committee. There are a few areas where we are either slightly above or slightly below risk appetite. So it might be easier to address that in the context of that review, where we can actually show the risk score versus the appetite, if that's okay, Chairman.
It's okay, but give me an answer to the question. And
there are areas.
There are areas that we as a board need to be aware of that give us pause or concern organizationally where our current level of risk exceeds our risk appetite.
Okay, so I would say there is an area, and it is not a surprise or nothing new, specifically for canals as an example, around the operation risk, and similar with financial capital and capital availability risk. I always say that wrong, forgive me. We are a bit out of the appetite range. That is a known issue to which we are pursuing additional funding options, again, some of which we discussed today. It does have a slightly higher risk appetite level than NYPA, knowing that we are prioritizing the highest priority critical infrastructure projects first, given the limited capital resources that we have to address the whole 526 miles. So there is a risk-based, engineering-based prioritization of assets, which we are looking to address and bring to a state of good repairs. However, at this time, as we've discussed in the past, we are a bit out of appetite. That is a reality that we're facing.
Okay. Well, as long as we just have a running dialogue as, yeah, our dynamic shifts, and it all comes back
Yes.
to resource allocation. For me,
Yes.
it's how do you allocate and reallocate resources
Yes.
given the demands and the changing demands as well as changing risk
Yes.
levels. So we can't keep leaning in
Right.
at higher risk initiatives when our
Yes.
demands are expanding, or how do we better balance that? So I just want to ensure we're appropriately being nimble and not
Yes.
constrained at our level by the schedule of risk committee meetings. So that's part of this.
No.
The reason
Okay.
why this is a standing
Yes.
agenda is so that we can talk about it here.
Yes, no, understood. And I think it might also be enlightening to take a moment to reflect that, as I mentioned before, for Canals operations and infrastructure, it is a risk-based model. There is a difference between our risk appetite and the current level precisely because we are addressing the riskier areas first. The lower risk items, it will take time to be able to get to those. So there is a balanced approach, acknowledging that everything can't happen all at once. So we are looking at this, like, where will there be the most impact when we make these investments? And then what do we have with the lower risk profile, the luxury of some more time as we're scheduling in that to capital plans? So that would be a little bit around the mechanism of how we look at the appetite, the risk itself, and then how we look at the mitigations that we put in place and the timing and the level of those.
Okay, as long as there's enough concurrent, dialogue there.
Yes.
Sequencing, let alone getting out of sequence is
Yes.
counterproductive. So just want
Yes.
to ensure we've got all of that information
Understood.
concurrently.
Yes, understood. And while we only report on risks twice a year formally, we do have continuous conversations
Right.
with the business. These are
Yeah.
ongoing. It's just the formal aggregation and report that
I
comes
just want to
to
ensure
you.
that bubbles up to us on a regular basis. That's
Yes.
what I mean. So,
Understood, yes. But from here, when you see, looking ahead to the risk report that we will see, no surprises. Everything that we have seen is pretty consistent. There were a few changes in the overall risk profile, and some of the topics where we've seen a little bit of divergence are ones that we have been discussing over the past year. So we haven't had any new particularly challenging areas come up, and none of them like biting us as well.
okay. So no red flags, you're telling us.
No red flags, no
Okay.
red flags. Good, thank you.
Any other questions for Alexis?
Yeah,
Okay.
good, thank you.
Thanks, Alexis. All right, coming down the home stretch here. As Adam referenced, we had a finance committee meeting last week, and there were, for my Roman numerals, it looks like 7 motions that we advanced for full approval here at the board meeting. A quick drive-by on those. Adam already talked about the initial ERP subsidy, both software and services contract, 22 million and 31 million respectively. 6-year engineering procurement contract, Elknor, Hawkeye, the MASH project, my words, for 155 million over a good number of years ahead of us. The 100 million, the next 100 million, if you will, for a total of 150 to date for Propel. Well, small by comparison in dollar amount, significant by impact, $400,000 to energy storage and microgrid training and certification program as part of our workforce training initiative. A 3-year employer of record services contract to a combination of 4 vendors for another 12 million. Capital expenditures of 7.4 million in connection with the Jarvis Power Project, and 15 million to be awarded to Lewis Tree Service over the next 5 years. So hopefully that's a sufficient refresh of the good work we did at Finance Committee a week, 10 days ago. And unless there's any other questions, I'd be pleased to entertain a motion to approve those recommendations for approval. Dennis, thank you. All right, Laurie, second. Any other questions? Otherwise, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. The consent agenda, as always, provided to us in advance. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to take a review. Happy to take any questions. Maribel, anything of note you want to reference there? Give a minute or two of special attention.
Yes, thank you so much, Chairman, trustees, NYPA colleagues and members of the public. I will take just those few minutes to kind of do a quick update on what we had approved. Thank you to Chair Morris, Trustee Trainer, and other board members. We were able to recommend the adoption of a administrative item, transferring allocations from one facility to another. That really does help our customers optimize their hydropower allocations where the load may not be coming to fruition at one particular facility, but it might yield greater savings at another. But the other item that I really want to just highlight has to do with the notice of proposed rulemaking, also known as a NOPR. This will be for the Recharge New York Power Program, the tariff amendment. And the reason why we're coming to you is there are three significant benefits for recommending this tariff adjustment. First and foremost is that will add a level of clarity of the bill particulars to our customers. Instead of it being one all-in rate, well, that doesn't add a layer of transparency, which Trustee Wheelock, you were mentioning a little earlier. We will be able to provide additional insights to our customers on the particulars of their bill, the NYPA hydropower, as well as market pass-through costs. It will simplify the way that this rate structure is actually developed. And then the third is just a benefit where they will actually realize the benefit of the NYPA hydro allocations that they applied for. They apply for this power. They make commitments of jobs and capital investments. And so what we want to do is really increase their knowledge of the benefit of that rate, how stable that rate is in comparison to the market costs that are passed through to them. And so just to call out one or two more things, the bill itself is made of the base demand, the rate that they pay, as well as an energy charge adjustment. And so what this is the way that we currently determine this is we do a forecast of anticipated market costs. And we all know how difficult that is to really anticipate what a year's worth of energy costs are going to be on customers. And the way that we pass this on to our customers is we will come up with one rate, charge them on that, and then every month when the actuals come in, we will impose an energy charge adjustment. Now, when the rates go up, we get a call saying, why did my NYPA power go up? Why did my NYPA rate go up? There's just not enough transparency in there for them to really understand. So what we are proposing to do is call it out. We call it an unbundling of the bill. And instead of an energy charge adjustment, what we're going to do is it's called a bill stabilization adjustment. Two key items that I want to add here is that they will see the market, the true market costs that go in. But when there is a large variation, when there is a large, whether it's a polar vortex or an oil or gas shortage that causes the market costs to increase, we will put a cap on what we will recover from the customers, and we will, through an interest-free, holding, we will recover the costs from customers over a number of months. So just want to recap that. So where there is a large spike in market costs, what we are going to do is amortize that and recover those costs over a certain number of months, interest-free. And so just again to the trustees, the recommendation that we are seeking approval for is that we be allowed to enter into the NOPA period and allow us a 60-day comment period, hear from the public on their reactions to this. One last note is that this has been demonstrated in other economic development programs, the Western New York Hydropower Program, and customer feedback was incredibly positive. They were able to see the value of the NYPA hydropower, but also when they get a realistic sense of the balance between hydro, non-hydro, it empowers them to make better decisions with their other energy suppliers, or how to hedge on their other market portions. So I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Okay, we're good. Senator Paul, you have a question?
So, man, sticky button. Thank you, Maribel. That's very interesting. Is there a way we could get a sample bill of what they currently get, and then what would be a sample bill for this new, kind of transparency piece? I think would be very interesting to see.
Absolutely. We have that. Our team worked on it with the finance team as well. So we have that ready to go for you.
Perfect. Thank you. I would love to see that.
And what you're asking us to do today is to get it out there to start the process. So
Correct.
people can comment on it, take a look at it, you can hear back, and you've said a little bit, you've already got some positive comments from another area in the state.
Yes,
Okay.
we implemented a similar practice with another economic development program, our Western New York power programs, our expansion power, replacement power. And now what we want to do is bring that to our Recharge New York power program.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maribel. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Unless there's any other questions, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda as was presented.
I'll move.
Cecily, thank you. Dennis, second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Unless there's anything else to come before us, that concludes today's agenda. Vanilla, kudos and congrats one more time. Eve, thanks for all you've done for us and best wishes, next steps in your journey. Organization, great work in 2024. Look forward to even better days ahead in 25. So we're not back together again in a couple months. Says March 25th, literally, I guess, about a couple months. So with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Dennis, thank you. B, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Have a great day, everyone. Stay warm, stay healthy, and we'll see you at the end of March.